Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've seen Venom, which I really enjoyed.
I did as well.
And I was expecting not to. And I think everyone seems to be having a rubbish time with it. But I think they're all taking it far too seriously.
Yes.
And it's a really entertaining, clumsy, fun movie with a good sense of humour.
Well, at the beginning of the film, actually, I thought, oh, this is going to be dire, because, you know, those whole scenes with Michelle Williams at the beginning where the Tom Hardy character is being established and so on, you could tell how it was trying to be charming and funny, but it wasn't really coming off. So kind of my heart sank, really. And I thought, where is this going? But by the end, it had won me over completely, and I thought that actually the humor worked really well, and I certainly laughed, and, you know, I thought the special effects were fantastic. It's kind of, I think they are taking it all far too seriously. I mean, it's not a great movie, right?
No.
But it's a hugely entertaining one, and actually there were some chase sequences where I just gasped. I mean, there's this moment where Tom Hardy's on a motorcycle, and he's going over one of those San Francisco hills, and the motorbike leaves him behind, yeah? And then he reaches out with the Venom arms, and I just thought, that's spectacular, it's fantastic, right?
I've got to say, actually, the action is, the chases were probably the thing about the film that impressed me the least. I thought they were kind of fine, but I wasn't hugely into them. But I think there are. Well, okay, so let's say what it's about, which is if you've seen Spider-Man 3, or indeed if you are familiar with the Spider-Man comics, then you'll be familiar with Venom, who there's a character called Eddie Brock who's a sort of journalist, and this sort of goo from space reaches Earth. It's called a symbiote. It latches on to creatures, and then it lives by attaching itself to them, and
uses up their organs in their body.
Yeah, and also kind of manifests sort of great powers. So like it can shapeshift and it can transform, and it's big and strong, and it has a personality. It's called Venom. This thing is, and it speaks like this. It's evil alien voice.
Yes.
And so it through one way or another, it ends up latching onto Eddie Brock. And he is confused and scared by it, but becomes kind of empowered, right? That's kind of enough without spoilers. In spoiler territory, what I'd say is the way that Venom turns out to not be kind of evil or has a change of heart is interesting. And I wish the film actually did something more with it. There are a couple of very, very clumsy scenes of exposition. The writing in the film is not great. And there are a couple of very clumsy scenes. There's one where he's explaining his weaknesses. They're in the back of the car with Michelle Williams. And he says, sound between 4,000 and 6,000 hertz kills me. Oh, and fire. It's like, oh, fire kills each other. Well, what a convenient. I wonder how the film's going to end then, because we haven't seen any fire yet. But it's really silly that would be. I mean, I guess it's like a comic book thing that like you have very specific weaknesses, but still that's silly. Also, the fact that it's also been established that he does need to latch onto a body to survive on Earth. So it's not just sound of a specific frequency and fire. The environment on Earth is not conducive to keeping Venom alive. But hey. You just ignore that, right? And the other thing is, when he has this change of heart, he decides that actually I'm going to stick around on Earth because there's this other symbiote called Riot who is sort of the leader, and he's a baddie, and he wants to bring. The plan is to bring all of these other symbiotes to Earth and take over.
Is the change of heart that I missed, actually. I didn't understand where the change of heart came from.
Exactly, this is it, right? So he basically says to Eddie Brock, I want to stay here. There is this thing about I'm a loser on my planet. He calls Eddie a loser. And because Eddie's not entirely hugely successful. I mean, he is in some ways, but he's...
Of course he's good. He starts off with his own TV show.
He blows it, right? And Venom calls him a loser. He calls him pussy at one point as well. And But then it turns out Venom says, actually, on my planet, I'm kind of a loser.
Yes, we're twins.
I know, and so
Yeah.
but if we're here, we can become more.
Yes.
And that's an interesting idea, which is not worked through. The film does quite a lot of that. Like, there's also this idea, which the film starts off with Eddie and Annie engaged, and then when he kind of steals the information and to try and expose the Life Corporation, he fucks it all up, and she leaves him. But there is this idea that, like, that in a weird way, the film is sort of like a romantic comedy with Eddie and Venom. And I think that because it's not an accident the film starts off with those two getting married. This idea of like of becoming one, but like sharing one life together. I thought there was something in it. I thought the film, even as a joke, I thought the film would make something of that, like making a joke that then Eddie was married to Venom, which it doesn't do. But like I think there's something in there that the film almost brings up and then ignores. This idea that they kind of, that when Venom decides I'm going to stay on Earth, because it's better for me and we can be together.
No, but actually, there's yes, and that's a really interesting point. But I think the film does more with it than you're suggesting, because then there's the whole porch conversation at the end where he says something like, "Oh, she belongs with us. We have to, So actually, So and of course, she has also inhabited his body, right? And actually, them being part of one is also, part of what makes her long for Tom Hardy at the end. So actually, the film is doing kind of interesting things about, in relation to all of that.
And only a tiny little bit. I don't think it does enough. I think actually it's something that is ignored, really.
I think it's not very well worked through, but it is suggested.
Also, this idea of, this isn't such a lack, I suppose, but the idea when he calls Eddie a pussy for not jumping out the window and taking the lift instead.
Yes.
I thought it was hinting at a kind of, there's an idea of a kind of lack of manliness in Eddie until Venom comes along and all of a sudden is powerful. But that's actually that's not really there. And that's something that
I disagree. I think it's there through Tom Hardy's performance and also the way that he's visualized for us physically, because unlike in some films where he's paired with people shorter than he is to make him seem larger, here he's always paired with people who are much taller than he is to make him seem frail and smaller, right, and suffering. Yeah, but
then the idea of then Venom kind of coming and changing that is, I think, actually what the film doesn't do. But I don't really have a problem actually with the film not doing that, because I think that could have ended up being really retrograde. The idea that, like, to be more of a man, you basically have to be big and strong and start punching things more would have been a predictable, and B, not entirely healthy idea. And so I think the fact that the film doesn't do that, it does something a little different and says, I'm a loser too, in a weird way.
Yes, though it also does do that. I mean, think of the neighbor, the heavy metal neighbor playing the heavy metal music.
Yeah, but we'll put it this way: it's not something that helps him win Michelle Williams back. It's not. If in another film, it would be.
Okay, I think we have kind of like quite a considerable disagreement in this film, because
of course it's not.
There's the scene where Venom has taken over her body, and she's gone on the chase after him when they've separated. Yeah, when through the frequency the bodies have been separated, and it looks like the Venom is about to eat Tom Hardy, and instead it ends up being like a kiss, and then like as the host moves from one body to another, they're kind of linked in those ways. I think
but I'm talking about the idea of manliness. It's like that Michelle Williams, in a different version of this film, Michelle Williams' character would have come back to Eddie at the end going, you're such a man now because of what Venom has given you. That's not what it is.
No. Well, that's
what I mean.
Well, I found all of that in the film really interesting. The fact that, at the very beginning of the film, he does something that he shouldn't. He goes into her private laptop and her mail, and opens up a case that's confidential, and basically that's it for her. And I thought that was wonderful, and it was beautifully handled. And when she shows up with another man, and the way that the other man is actually really nice. There's so many ways that one could have played that, and to make him kind of nice, and to make them a couple, and to make them comfortable being a couple. I thought that was really interesting and unusual.
Yeah, I like that too.
Let's not talk about missed opportunities. Let's talk about what the film realizes, because actually, I disagree with most of the reviewers. I actually think it's much better than people have it. So kind of, let's talk about what is good about it, really.
Well, it's really funny.
It's really funny at the end.
All throughout.
Well, I kind of, as I said, I didn't like the beginning, but as soon as Venom comes in, it becomes really funny. As soon as Tom Hardy is talking to his alter ego, that's when it kind of really takes off for me.
Which, to be fair, that's actually quite a while in. It's got to be. I mean, it's a good. It's like 40 minutes or more before.
That's right.
Before they get attached. There's a lot of scene setting and character building before then.
Yes.
So right, I mean, I don't think any of that was bad. Like, I liked the way it was kind of building the world that he lives in and the personality that he has. But then you're right that once Venom attaches to him and he starts talking to himself, and the physical performance gets elevated, that he starts like fighting with his own body, then it livens up a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Hardy is completely great. And he alone is reason enough to see the film, so kind of he's got stubble. He looks like he's let himself go. He looks like somebody like really troubled throughout. It's almost like he carries a cloud with him throughout the film, actually. Even from the beginning, I think. And he's just great.
Yeah. I from the trailer, I actually was worried about it, because I thought his accent didn't sound that great in the trailer, for one thing. He's got a very broad sort of New York accent, but actually it started to work for me. I think within the tone of the film, it works, because there is a kind of broadness. I mean, look at Venom, for instance. Like, there's nothing understated about the way Venom looks and the way he behaves. Like, he's this huge rictus grin, covered in black goo. Like, his lips never touch. Like when he speaks, he's so committed to this grin that his lips never meet when he makes any sound. You know what I mean? Like, it's unrealistic. Oh, well, unrealistic, but like it's silly, and it's actually kind of, you notice it. But like, I think you notice it in the best way. Like, you can't take your eyes off this huge, creepy grin that he has.
I mean, it kind of, I once Venom came in, like, I was with the film all of the way, and there were some things that I really liked very much. I really loved the way that the symbiosis of Venom and the Tom Hardy character, the way that it's visualized, the way that kind of, you have like the sinew, liquid sinew that grows out of him, that can become solidified, and the way that it can extend from different parts of the body. And, I think it kind of lends itself to a very kind of visual, but also mobile, kind of imagery, really, that to me was a real pleasure to watch.
Yeah, and the imagery when the symbiote is not attached to a creature, and you see it moving around, the way that it's sort of goopy and sticky and climbs and attaches itself to surfaces, creepy as hell.
Let's talk a little bit about Riz Ahmed, because he's the villain. To me, he's a major weakness, right? Like, one of the things in this film is that the Easter egg at the end kind of brings up Woody Harrelson, right? Yeah. And Woody Harrelson is on screen for 60 seconds or something, and he's just thrilling to watch. So I think actually that Riz Ahmed is a problem, because, as you say, it's not that he's doing anything wrong, but actually he's miscast. To me, he doesn't have
no, he doesn't have it.
He doesn't have it. Yeah, and he doesn't have, and he doesn't make much with that performance, actually. So, all of these villains in these films, in a way, you could say they're all underwritten or whatever. But actually, if you have like a star performer play that role, they bring something to it. And actually, the thing with Riz Ahmed is he's not per se doing anything wrong, but he's not making much of it.
Your cake is ready.
My cake is ready, and I'm going to go check it. I'll just be a second. Okay.
But actually, the whole back end of the film is kind of shonky as well. When they're having the climactic fight on the spaceship, or the spaceship's about to take off because Riz Ahmed / Riot wants to get into space to get all the other symbiotes here to take over, and Venom decides I'm going to stop him. That is clearly the climactic fight when it's happening. Like, you don't just have a fight on a spaceship that's taking off in the middle of a film.
Yes.
And at the time, I was still thinking, like, wait, this is the end? Like, there seems to be so much left to develop. Like for instance, why Venom had this change of heart. I think it's a huge problem in the film that it just happens. I think actually the film sacrifices things like that because it wants to really just concentrate on the entertainment value of seeing Venom and Eddie interact and seeing them interact with other people and other things. Like, that's hugely entertaining. And the film is so enamoured with that it means that there's no space left to explain in any, like, to really develop why Venom would want to stay. He just goes, no, I like it here. I've decided I like it here.
Yeah. It's a very good imitation that you do.
It's not like Bane, is it? You know? It's not. It's just a general kind of, oh, I'm an evil guy.
Still, I found it very entertaining.
Yeah. No, I mean,
So-
that is the tone of the whole film. It is really broad.
Yes.
You know, that New York accent, like I was saying, really broad, and I was worried that it would be rubbish, but actually just totally works, because everything in the film is really broad,
Yes.
and you just go with it, man.
And so I like the special effects. I like the chase sequences. I love Tom Hardy's performance. And I love the use of San Francisco in the film. You know, kind of, I love the cityscape, the skyline, you know, how it's deployed as a site for action. Yeah, you get kind of a real sense of action taking place in, a very specific place that I like very much. And I also like the way that, what was it, the Life Corporation, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the way that was visualized as, like, you know, this little spaceship kind of design in the midst of a hill, you know, across the bay. I liked all of that.
Yeah.
So ignore the critics and give it a go. You know, we
and ignore our criticism as well, because we've got some, but it doesn't change the fact the film is really, really good fun.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, it's a film with you know, quite considerable faults. But it's great fun. It was very enjoyable, and it did all the things that it was supposed to do, at least with me. I found it very funny. There were moments that I kind of went back because, you know, I was a bit scared. Yeah, like you get a boom. And then there were moments that were just kind of exciting to watch, really. So, you know, a film that kind of elicits all of those different visceral effects is not the nothing that, you know, everyone else seems to be saying.
And a film that actually, like I say, for the fact that it takes 40 minutes or more to get these characters together. Like that whole opening, I mean, you might have had your problems with it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the way it built. I liked what it developed of Eddie's character and his kind of social conscience, and there was so much in him that you kind of felt could be corrupted when Venom got involved, which actually was not.
Yes.
Right? Like, I was watching the original 3 Spider-Man movies the other day, the Sam Raimi trilogy. I watched them recently, especially Spider-Man 3, which people had a horrible time with, and people have really bad memories of, and actually it's so good in so many ways. It's like, the end of it just kills the whole thing, but there's lots of really, really great stuff in there. And I was noticing this kind of thing, and it might be a more general sort of superhero-y thing, but I did notice it particularly with the Spider-Man films, of the idea of being like a good normal person being transformed or taken over by something. Like, people aren't just bad in these films. People start off good, and then something happens to them. So with Norman Osborn, it's that he uses that poison on himself, and he gets taken over by the Green Goblin. But that starts off as like a voice in his head, like Venom does here. It doesn't just turn him evil. It's something else in him that takes him over. With Doctor Octopus in the second film, it's the arms that, you know. There's this really silly warning where it's like he puts these arms on, and someone says, "Isn't there a possibility that the AI in these things could take you over?" And he's like, "Very true. That's why he goes, absolutely they could. That's why I put this really flimsy inhibitor chip on the outside, which can be broken at a moment's notice, which obviously happens, then the arms take him over. But then at the end of the film, he's still in there, and he fights the arms back and sacrifices himself to save New York. And then Spider-Man 3, again, like Sandman has the same sort of thing where he's a criminal, but he only steals because he wants to support his child. And I think his kid needs healthcare or something, so there's a whole thing about that too. And you know, he's kind of being chased, and ultimately, like, left to his own devices, he would be a good person. You get the feeling, you know. And there's and then there's the Venom thing, where Venom takes over Spider-Man, and Spider-Man starts becoming a villain in that film. He gets very, very full of himself, and Venom kind of latches onto him, and just makes him the worst version of himself, which is when the film starts to fall apart, and you get that awful thing with the emo hair, and it's just the campiest, silliest version of evil you've ever seen, which didn't work for people. But you can see what the film's going for. Like, Spider-Man becomes a villain in that film, and there's a scene where he forgives Sandman at the end and lets him go, which is really about redemption of Spider-Man, not redemption of Sandman. And then Venom latches onto Eddie Brock instead, who is a dick in that film. And the reason that, and those two get on so well because it's just like evil meets evil, and they get on famously. So there's this thing about instead of just being an evil person, like, there's someone in there that is latched onto it, and this is what's going on in this. The thing about in Venom, you get this really visceral feeling of the symbiote living inside Eddie. You know, it's not like it's not like it doesn't transform him. Eddie is totally there, and he's not changed really by it. He's very scared of it, and they have this relationship, and that's like so fundamental to why the film works and the way it works, the way it does, and. So the way that's kind of visually represented by, you know, like when the sound is played, and you get this kind of phasing image of the symbiote coming out and not coming out, and the idea that, like, it can partially come out, goes in through his pores, the idea that they are separate and just living together, I found I really enjoyed, and I think it really fit with what I kind of the ideas that I previously had and what I was watching of the Spider-Man films recently. And just really, I don't know, what can I say? I just liked. You
see, what I found kind of most interesting, you know, aside from what I said about the special effects and the chase scenes and so on, is actually what Tom Hardy does with the character, because kind of, you know, what he depicts is this very kind of frail masculinity, really, that is then in pain, like, you know. So it's like throughout the film, it's like what's happening to him is he goes through kind of constant needs. So he's cold, he's hungry, he's shivering, he's frail, he's vulnerable. Yeah, like, kind of, you know, it's amazing. Kind of, it's almost like the opposite of being heroic. Really, it's like he's a heroic against his will, almost. Yeah. Kind of, you know, and all that you see is kind of, you know, a suffering person. And actually, the suffering person is because he basically made a bad moral decision at the beginning, under the guise of being like a do-gooder, yeah? So I kind of like all of that aspect of the film, actually, and I think there's something interesting to explore there in terms of, you know, what kind of a man is, what's Tom Hardy's character?
Eddie Brock.
You know, I think it's a really great performance and a really interesting way of characterizing this person, of making this person, you know, the center of a superhero film.
Yeah, well, superhero-ish. Like, this is the other thing. Like,
superhero-ish. That's good. Yes.
Yeah. So, like, it's Venom is a villain, right? Venom is a villain, and so, like, this is he's kind of a hero here, because ultimately, like, the point is Venom changes his mind to save the Earth because he decides he likes it here. and Eddie has made a bad decision, but there's no way he's a villain. You couldn't possibly conceive him as a villain. And he's not corrupted by Venom, or at least he's not corrupted insofar as he's still ultimately good. But like he does say to Venom at the end, like, okay, if you need to eat people, we're just going to eat the very worst people.
Yes.
But like there's a kind of corruption in there.
Yes.
But it's like there's like a Robin Hood sort of corruption. Like just eat the worst ones.
I thought the end with the hold up in the grocery store was, an interesting thing, because you could see also there, why the film, though entertaining as it is, it's not really great. And actually it's partly because it makes dodgy decisions like that. So you could see that Venom was going to eat that gangster, right? Almost from the very beginning. But there's a moment in between where he says, if you do this again, I will eat your arm and your leg and whatever. And I think, okay, good. That's a moral decision, because, you're deciding here not to take a life. You're giving someone a chance, right? Yeah. And then actually that goes right out the window.
That wasn't the problem I had with it. The problem that I had with that was, I thought the end was a bit overlong. But I think it's like he promises, I'm going to eat your arms and then your legs and then your face off your head. And then when he actually goes, actually I'm going to eat him, it just cuts away. Yeah. I know it wants to be a 12A, but like that's really like, come on, just show me.
you gore monster.
I think that's the value of like, that's what I want to see. And it's not there. So I have a bit more confidence. Just show something really, do it over the top, so it's not like realistic, kind of gory, but just like do it, man. I want to see that.
Okay.
That's very boring, but just to finish the point, because we were talking about the idea that it's like a superhero, but it's not quite, because Venom is a villain, and Venom ultimately survives the movie, which again I think is dodgy, because like you just think he's died in the fireball, but then it's just like, oh no, he's still there. Fine, so he's still there, and obviously he's gonna then play some part, presumably, in later Spider-Man movies and possibly the Marvel universe. But then, like, as what, right? Is he going to then start becoming a villain?
But isn't that interesting? Because it opens up all those possibilities.
Well, I'm interested to see the possibilities, but, like, it's curious to see.
And it's also kind of an interesting film, because at least for most of the film, the hero and the villain are one. Yeah, or they're united in the same body, let's say. Right? So I think that's very interesting. Then, of course, it brings up another antagonist. And I regretted that the double structure posited Tom Hardy and his symbiote vis-a-vis Riz Ahmed and his symbiote. I think it would have been better, or more interesting to have not given Riz Ahmed, a symbiote as well. That's felt a bit cliche-ish, really.
Yeah, that was, well, I guess it had to be in a way. Like that's what gives you that's what then brings you the idea of like why Venom kind of fancies it on Earth, where he's away from, I'm such a loser on my planet, but I can be a king here. That's where you get that from. I get that, but it was a little bit like the Ang Lee Hulk film, where it was just like, who's the villain of the Hulk? Just a bigger electric Hulk, I think it was. But I'm just see who did the voice of Venom. I wonder if it was Hardy.
I thought it was Tom Hardy.
It is Tom Hardy doing the voice. Yeah. A James Brown lounge lizard-like voice for Venom.
Yes, it did.
if you like, but it's interesting to me because I mentioned Bane, and obviously that's become kind of iconic, that voice.
Yes.
Yes, the fire rises.
Well, I think
I can't do nearly as well because it's not nearly as broad.
Yes, but I thought it was very good. It was very funny.
It was fun.
So it's a great performance, really. It's a great series of two performances.
Yeah, I mean, you could say like Bane doesn't work in this film, just as Venom doesn't work in the Dark Knight Rises. Like it's just like the tone is so different, but they both work perfectly for what they're doing.
They do. So he adds all the humor as well as all the suffering.
And last thing, you wanted to mention the director, I think, Ruben Fleischer.
Yes.
Who you said you like his movies?
No, I didn't say that.
I didn't.
I said I didn't. That I'd seen more of his films than I expected.
Okay.
But none of them really stand out.
Zombieland. Zombieland was the one that with Woody Harrelson and what's his bananas from Ghostbusters? Bill Murray.
Oh, right.
That's that great Bill Murray cameo.
I don't remember it.
Oh, it's great. Look for it on YouTube.
Okay.
It's the Zombieland Bill Murray bit. It's great. This had a Stan Lee cameo. You didn't roll your eyes for once.
Well,
It made a joke about his dog looking delicious.
Yes.
Actually, the dog. We forgot the dog. The dog was so funny. There's this little dog in the hospital. This is the last thing. There's a little dog in the hospital, which is some of the patient's little dog, and like the dog's barking away at Venom, and it's one of those things like the dog can tell,
Yes.
and but I'm like he's going to eat the dog. He has to eat the dog. And what happens to the dog is so much better than that. He inhabits the dog. He gets inside the dog. It's so great because you know it's happened. Because it doesn't show it, but it just cuts away in the right way. You know it's happened, and so
the eyes glow.
But it's before that.
Oh,
it's
right.
before that because it cuts away when the symbiote comes out, and you know it's going to get into the dog, and then you've got all the baddies leaving the hospital searching for Eddie, who no longer has Venom. And then the little dog is going down the hall, and it's just like before its eyes glow, it's just it's such a tiny little like toy whatever dog, and it's going doo-doo-doo, but you know that the most evil thing in the world is in there. It's so great, and then its eyes glow, and it's like remember the bit with the dog in the Meg, where the dog's swimming away, and you know that the thing's coming after. It's just like that, like it's because it's the tiniest, cutest little thing. And the most evil. I really love that.
You're such a sadist. It's like.
I thought it was lovely. But no, I like the fact that the dog. Well, you don't see the dog die. You assume, I guess, it must have eventually. But I like that. Like, even though it didn't die, which it was initially what I wanted, it was even more entertaining.
Okay, we need to wrap it up now.
Yeah, it's great.
Go see it.
I'm not even gonna. It's just great, man.
Okay. So, thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies.
Yeah, we're on SoundCloud, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, eavesdroppingatthemovies.com, and something else probably.
We're everywhere.
A YouTube.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.